Salve a tutti, sono Almaro e benvenuti in un nuovo video. Oggi siamo qui per fare un'intervista a Dylan Hughes, bassista e membro fondatore degli Hecate Enthroned. Prima di iniziare, ringrazio Dylan per la sua disponibilità, per aver accettato di essere nostro ospite, vi lascio l'intervista e vi auguro buona visione. Nice to meet you and thank you for accepting this.
No problem, mate. Nice to meet you. Thanks for the interview.
Why you started to do music, what you started to do with metal music, talk me about the beginning of your career and the beginning of the band.
Oh, well, I was always into music as a kid, into the sort of rock at that time. You had all the great bands through the 70s and into the 80s, and it started progressing, getting a bit heavier. And I sort of, like most people, I think that are into this kind of music, you just went with the heavier side, and the heavier bands started coming out. Heavy metal started progressing in the late 80s with thrash. Then we started getting 90s with black metal, death metal. It's just a progression that we went with. And at the start there, with the early days of Hecate, we were in different sort of formats of different bands, but they were all on the heavier side. And we sort of divulged into sort of death metal, and then we started with the black metal thing and the events of keyboards. We started having sort of keyboards in the bands. That's the way we went. But we've all been into the darker side, I think, of metal.
Talking about the first Hecate Enthroned album, The Slaughter of Innocence, A Requiem for the Mighty. Talk me about the genesis of the album, and now it's considered one of the most important melodic black metal albums. So can you talk about it?
Yeah, it was. After the EP came out, so they were all the songs that we had from different sort of versions of the band that became the first Hecate Enthroned EP. So that's what we were doing. We were honing our skills with aggressive black metal, but obviously with the choirs and the keyboards and all, the sort of the strings, that sort of effect. So when we did the first album, Slaughter, it was just on a bigger scale to the first EP. By that time, we had more ideas. We were more used to doing what we were doing, bringing in all the different harmonies, not just with the guitars, but bringing in strings, breaking in orchestras, choirs, pianos. And it was just, our first sort of major full, symphonic black metal album. Imagery-wise, obviously, at that time where we were all still up in North Wales, so it was a lot to do with the local area and all the mountains, woods, forests in Wales, and I think that sort of comes out a lot in not just in the music, but obviously in the titles and the lyrics. I mean, the lyrics at that time, was John, and it was a lot. It was quite obviously the satanic elements, but there was also a lot of witchcraft and pagan elements there, because living where we lived, it's that was the sort of that's the history of where we're from, especially particularly sort of religion wise. It's all the old stuff, but the album it's got that whole feel to it. The artwork, we finished off with the Simon Marsden photographs, which we were quite sort of heavily into then. But it was when you do your first full album, that's the test, you know what I mean? The EP was received very well, and it was obviously a hint of what we could do. So with the first album, it had to be something, up again on another level. So but like I said, it's been very well received. Even now, it still does well, and it's definitely something that's an iconic part of our music history.
More people paragonate Hecate Enthroned at other band of the symphonic black metal. What do you think about this?
We're just symphonic black metal. That's what we do. We've with the more sort of esoteric sort of elements we have with the keyboards. I mean, I think delivery-wise, music-wise, especially live, we're a lot more aggressive, I think, and heavier than a lot of symphonic bands. But that's because we do have that sort of old school death metal thrash sort of background. So guitar wise, I think, and delivery, we are a lot more aggressive than the majority of symphonic melodic black metal bands, but we do like those elements to come in there. I mean, that's what we've done. Like I said, we've been doing it for quite a while. Early days when we started doing that stuff, there wasn't that many bands that were sort of doing it, particularly not over here. So we just did it. I mean, we didn't really pay much attention to what people were saying at the time. I mean, to be honest with you, the bands that we were really listening to at that time and we really enjoyed were more the Scandinavian bands. It was, Dissection, Emperor, Satyricon, You know what I mean? Well, that kind of thing is what we really sort of like. But I think we do have that typically British feel to what we do. I think, you know what I mean. You know, if you get a Central European black metal band, a Scandinavian, a Southern, if you go over to America, North America, South America, you know, they have a certain style and a certain way of doing it. And I think over here in Britain, we do seem to have that more sort of you know, avant-garde, gothic-y sort of feel to us. But obviously, of course, with Britain, you have all that new wave of British heavy metal, which are very guitar-influenced bands, and twin guitar leads, which is something that we also do. But yeah, I mean, the similarities can arise if you say with anything. I mean, if you're a symphonic black metal band, of course, you're going to share certain aspects with certain other bands doing a similar thing.
What about the philosophy of the band in the lyrics of Hecate Enthroned?
Yeah, I mean, things have changed obviously as we've all gotten older. Priorities outside of music and what you're doing, you know, they do change, and there's other things of, you know, some of the lads have families, so there's children's involved. We all have to work. Unfortunately, from where we are, there's you know, there's not much money in black metal what we do. So you know, we've always had jobs, and you've got to sort of balance things out. I mean, we just can't, like we used to do. We'd go off on tour for weeks and you know, months, but you know, realistically, you know, we've not been able to do that. So it's, you know, you know, your life does change, and you have to balance stuff out. But for us, you know, we've always continued. It's always been there. You know, we've always done Hecate Enthroned. I mean, there's been some, you know, some patches where we just haven't been as active, and I think that is down to you know, these outside circumstances. But it's still a very, very important part of our lives, and it's something, like, say, for some of us, you know, it's going to be 30 years next year from the release of first EP. You know what I mean? It's difficult to think of a time when we weren't in Hecate Enthroned and we weren't doing what we were, you know, what we're doing. But, you know, we've had a lot of changes. We've had different members that have come in and out. But, you know, we've got a sort of a core that's been together for quite a while. So I suppose really when we do start doing stuff again and we start writing, it is quite natural for us. We just go back into that groove because we know each other so well. We can just bounce off each other. But it's you know, music in general is an incredibly important thing to us all, and it's a major part. And also the performing, you know, to actually go out there and perform as a band, perform as Hecate Enthroned and play that stuff. It's that doesn't really change. Whatever changes around you in your life, the band and how you feel about it, that doesn't really, you know, it doesn't really change. I mean, there can be ups and downs, and things can be frustrating, and there's other outside annoyances, because let's be honest, it is a business, whether you like it or not, so that can sour things. But just for us, it's just musically pure music. That's what we love doing, and obviously we've been doing it for a very long time. I think if we didn't, we wouldn't still be doing it now in 30.
At first, you mentioned John Kennedy, your first singer, at 1 year of his death. How you remember about him?
It was, you know, sharing the band together, you know, playing together, practicing together, going out together. You know, we were back in the day when Hecate Enthroned started. We were all, you know, very close. There was a close, you know, friendship there, and we shared a lot of things together. I mean, some of the lads actually, you know, lived together, shared this, you know, the same house. So there's lots of stories, lots of, you know, crazy stuff, you know, just around the band, going out doing photo shoots, going out doing this, that, you know what I mean? There was always a lot of good times with us. You know, we can't, you know, black metal, you got to sort of be a bit sort of, but we always laughed with John, and different things we do, big parties we used to have. I remember this, you know, so it's yeah, I got a lot of fond memories of John, and I can remember him because I'm like the old man of the band even now. But John, you know, he was quite a bit younger than us, so I always remember him when I first met him. You know, he was this very excited, very, you know, very passionate lad, but with a huge musical talent, a really big musical talent. So it's yeah, really good memories and some good times.
What about the future project of Hecate Enthroned? What about your project for 2025?
Yeah, well, we've got a lot more stuff coming. We've already getting a lot of shows booked, so we've got a few things that we've already got on the calendar. It's going to be our first time North America next year, Chicago, with Metal Threat. So that's an exciting thing for us. We hope that's going to, open more doors and we can get out there. We've got plans maybe for some other regions, but we'll have to look at how next year goes and maybe save that back. But there's also going to be a new album we're currently writing. So that's more or less done. We're actually going to be starting pre-production in January. So we'll start getting, getting drums down, getting it all sorted, do some tracking, get some guitars, and then we'll see how quickly that gets done. And we'll look at when we can get this album released with M Theory. So, I mean, ideally, we would have looked at an early year release, but things have just not sort of gone that way with us. There's a lot of stuff that's come up for us this year, but it will be a release. We're hoping maybe back end of the summer, perhaps, and then we can see what will happen with that. But we're definitely going to be more active, and we've got quite a few sort of small scale festivals and some club dates already booked.
If you want to be remembered for an album in your career, which is and why?
I don't know. Me personally, I quite like Dark Requiems. I think Dark Requiems is it's a good album. It's a very moody, broody sort of got a dark. Slaughter was definitely that big symphonic hit, but it had a very much different production because it was actually Andy Sneap was on Slaughter, and I think it was his first production job actually. So it was a very it's a very bright. I mean, Requiems has a bit more darkness to it. I feel, you know what I mean. It's a bit, and the songs were just a bit more in that realm. So yeah, I like the whole thing around Dark Requiems. But I suppose for us as a band, the big releases. I mean, it's always your first release, and I said, the EP we did was such a successful release at the time. It was definitely something that moved us straight up there. But I think the last album, what we did with the last album, I mean, that was, for us, that was a really big album. It was back to that sort of old school, really big, epic orchestral, but it was such a well put together album. Dan Arbella produced it and mastered it, did such a fantastic job with it. I think that's something that, we're very, very proud of after such a long time out of recording. I think that's something that really did get us back and got us, got people talking again.
In your opinion, how many things have changed in black metal scene where you started from nowadays? How is it difficult to become a musician nowadays?
It's difficult. I mean, to be honest, being over here in Britain when we first started, you had hardly any. There was a handful of black metal bands. It really was, and now there are so many over in the UK, and it's really good. It's brilliant. It's UK black metal is as strong as it's ever been, and we've got some fantastic bands over here. We've got some young bands. We've got some old sods like us, and then you got some in between us. And there's such a wide variety as well. Black metal now has got such a different feel to it. I mean, look at our band in itself. You've got Nige, he plays in Death Odd, which is another fantastic sort of pagan influenced North Walian band. And you've got Joe in Baal, which are a bit more sort of a bit proggy, a bit sort of spacey out there, absolutely fantastic. And obviously Matt's Insidious, which are another very, straight ahead driving aggressive black metal band, and that's just sort of the people. There's so many bands that we play with now quite regularly that we never used to get the opportunity because it was so few. So I think in some respects things are a bit easier in the fact that you can get something put together yourself a bit cheaper. You can get it out there. You can put it on platforms. You can get it, But at the same time, that means there's a lot more saturation. So you got a lot more competition. I mean, record labels, if that's the way you want to go and you do want to get signed by an independent or you want to get a record label, there is such a, there's such a vast choice for these labels. I think that can be quite difficult. But I mean, at the end of the day, you can do so much yourself, which we never really had that opportunity. We started off, it was, to get distribution and production because nothing was online at that time. It's you had to more or less get signed to get something out there, but that's not necessarily the case. And I think the more power a band has over their own writings, over their own recordings, and over their own output, the better. If you know what I mean, if you can keep hold of your rights, keep hold of what you've got, then that definitely is the most important thing. I mean, people can still get hold of it and people can listen to it. But I suppose we all want as many people to listen to it as we possibly can. And that's when you've got to maybe get something with distribution or get some physical sales out there. It's a different thing. But when it comes to writing music, I think it's just people do what they do. I mean, if I wasn't in a signed band, I hadn't done albums, I'd probably still be sitting at home playing the guitar or playing, you do what you do until you've actually got something. Maybe you then look upon it differently. If I look back to how I was when I started off and to see where I am now, you'd think, yeah, okay, there's things I could have done differently, but at the same time, I'm very proud. So it's just do your music, and if you can get it out, brilliant. The same with gigs. It used to be, there's a lot of venues now. There's a lot more promoters doing this kind of thing, but it's still quite difficult to get on the bigger scale gigs because obviously I think now everything comes as a tour package. So in the old days, a local band would get a bit of a go. They would put them on. They'd have a bit of a hit, but now it doesn't tend to happen. But there's still a lot of clubs and a lot of venues, and unfortunately, we've got to keep them going because it's been a tough time for venues. It's been a tough time for clubs. We've had the whole COVID lockdown thing that affected a lot. Then we've got the whole thing with with Brexit, with who can come in and out of countries, who can travel, who can't. So some countries are losing out some bands that maybe they would have had a few years ago because unfortunately the cost of everything has sort of pushed up. But I think black metal worldwide is healthy. It's a lot healthier than it's been than it used to be. We've just got to keep going, whatever level you're at, whatever you do, whatever style, just keep doing it.
Thank you for your time. Thank you for staying here today. Good luck for your project. Bye.
Hey, thank you. Thanks very much.